Good morning. I'd like to welcome you all to Eggs and Issues this morning. We're sponsored by PTCI, so if you'd like to thank them for the breakfast. They're a great community partner. We have our newly inducted Senator Casey Murdoch here with us today, so we're going to let him give some updates and let us know what's going on down in the Capitol.
All right, thank you, Jada. Well, thank you all for coming. So this week I got sworn in, or swore at. It's been a crazy week, but no, I was sworn in Monday. Last week's ice storm, I was supposed to have been sworn in last week, but the ice storm kind of affected that. We shut down on Wednesday and Thursday at the Capitol, so wound up doing it on Monday. And Senate is a little different. You know, while I've been your representative, I try real hard to return every phone call, every email. Over in the Senate, please have patience. I can't get my email yet, and so give me a little time before I respond. I'm doing the best I can, but they have a hard time. We need PTCI to come and get them to get the email to put it on my phone. So anyway, so what's kind of been happening, I'm trying to think, this has been kind of a whirlwind since our last Eggs and Issues. I'll talk about the step up that went down. I know a lot of educators were upset because they had a pay raise tied to that. I was a no. It was a horrible bill for Northwest Oklahoma. It would have cost Northwest Oklahoma in several ways. It would have their cap, or not their cap, but their one megawatt tax on wind would have killed development. Wyoming did the exact same thing. In 2006, 2009, it stopped wind development in the state of Wyoming. Zero wind development. That was in there. Also, how many in this room thinks that we need to raise GPT? Just one?
I'm raising.
Okay. So in Step Up, it was raising GPT to 4%. Yes. But you have to remember who put Step Up together. That wasn't us. Step Up was not our plan. It was put together by the millionaires and billionaires of Tulsa and Oklahoma City. And reading the bill, you could see the carve-outs for each one of these guys' business. And as far as oil and gas, they went to 4%. But also in the language, if they shut the well down for 12 months, they started over when they started it back up at 4%. And it was every well in Oklahoma went to 4% at the enacting of this bill. Well, I was trying to get how many wells was moving from 2 to 7 this month and next month. Actually, February and March, last month and this month. I could never get any numbers. But I know there's a whole lot of wells going from 2 to 7 these 2 months. Well, with this bill, they wouldn't go to 7. They'd go from 2 to 4 and stay at 4 for another 36 months. The other thing was it took away some of our negotiation power with the tribes. And I think, the compacts in 2010, Governor Henry gave the state away. We lost a lot of negotiation rights with the tribes. This was going to take more away. So, bottom line, I think it was a bad bill. I got the language on Thursday, and we voted on Monday. And I was going to bring it so you could see actually how thick it was. but in the move from the House to the Senate, it got put somewhere. You know, when you move, you know, it's in the box somewhere, I'm sure, but I couldn't find it. But it was that thick. And I try to vet every bill that we have, and how I vet a bill is I will call someone up here and see how it affects them. So if I have an accounting or a tax bill, I'll call Roger Edinburgh and say, hey, how will this affect our farmers? How will this affect our businesses in the Panhandle? If it's a pharmacy bill, I call a pharmacist up here and say, hey, how does this affect your pharmacy? Well, with this bill, I didn't have enough time to get through and vet it. And you know, what I mentioned to you was on my first reading through this bill. Because like I said, it was that thick. That was what was blatantly open, what this bill did. And you can change the whole meaning of a bill by changing one word. And a lot of people said, you know, why do you need to vet it? We've talked about everything we're doing in here for a year. Yes, we've talked about the policy of everything we have been or everything that bill was doing for a year. But then when you start sticking it together in one bill and cementing it together, this and that, and all you got to do is change one word, and it can change the whole meaning of a legislation. Whether it's from shall to may, or, I mean, you get a good lawyer, and they can make it a totally different meaning whenever they're interpreting it. So, anyway, it was a bad bill. I was glad it went down, because I really think it would have hurt Northwest Oklahoma. Yesterday, well, the transition over. Okay, let me finish up on the House. It's really confusing because I started bills in the House, trying to get them moved over. The ice storm really did mess with that because the House was shut down on Wednesday and Thursday, and I had bills scheduled for the floor on Wednesday to get them off and ready to go to the Senate. Well, with the House shutting down, they're still sitting over there. So I had to find someone to run them for me on the House side. I had one bill left in committee that I was supposed to have heard that week. It was heard this week. I had to find someone to hear it. Another IT problem is I didn't have a Senate author whenever I left on that one bill, but I didn't think, you know, it wasn't going to be a big problem. The House author has to sign off on the Senate author on the computer. They've locked me out of the House side. So I'm working, and it's just an IT problem. It's not a rule. I'm working with the floor leader and the IT guy to figure out some way to get in there and let me approve a Senate author. Am I capable of being a House author and a Senate author? So HB 1234, authored by Murdoch in the House and Murdoch in the Senate. Yes, I'm legally capable of doing that. I've only got one bill I'm going to do that on. And it's a changing an and to or. It is OHP has a bill that says that their cars can be black and white. Well, it should have read black or white. Well, I'm changing that and or. That's the bill that we're having fun with, that it will be Murdoch of the House, Murdoch of the Senate. Why I'm not doing that with my important bills is they're too important to risk someone saying, well, he shouldn't be able to do that. Or get it through the House and the Senate and get it to the governor, and she says, I don't think this doesn't pass this. I don't think he should be able to do this, and she vetoes it. So my other bills, I'm just going to leave my Senate authors with who I had before. So that gets us to the Senate. So sworn in Monday. This week has been crazy. A lot of people's come up and goes, how do you like the Senate? How do you like the Senate? Hadn't had time. With the ice storm, this is deadline week to get bills out of committee. I've been in A and B committees till 7:30, 8 o'clock every night this week. Actually, I got out of the city last night at 8. We got out about 7:30. I get to my apartment, pack up and head out. So I rolled in here about midnight, I think, is when I got here. But one of the bills that we were able to kill, and if you remember maybe the first or second Eggs and Issues, I think I made the comment I'm more proud of the bills that I've killed down there than the bills I've passed. And that is, that still stands true today. And one of those bills yesterday that we killed, night before last, sorry, was making your ag sales tax credit, or tax credit, a refundable. What that means is you have to keep your receipts, and then at the end of the year you turn them in and the Oklahoma Tax Commission will refund your ag tax, what you're exempt from. That means the state of Oklahoma is going to be using your money for a year before you get it back. What that means to me as an ag producer is I've got to borrow 10% more on my operating note so I can operate. What that means for a new start up farmer or rancher, he's got to have 10% more capital to get started. It was a bad bill. I think, honestly, being a farmer, being a rancher, it would have killed downtown businesses throughout rural Oklahoma. Because being a farmer and rancher like I am, I wouldn't have messed with that. I'd have went to Texas. I'd have went to Kansas, and I'd have bought my stuff there. So I didn't have to deal with keeping a receipt for a year and save 10%. But what happens whenever your farmers and ranchers are buying their parts in Texas or Kansas? Well, we're here, let's go ahead and buy our groceries. Let's go ahead and buy our shoes. You build a relationship with that tractor dealership and, well, I need a new tractor. Let's just go ahead and buy it here. It would kill rural Oklahoma's economy. And in committee, I told them, I said, look, I drive farther than anyone here. And when I leave the city and drive through rural Oklahoma, I also told them, I said, shoot, I'm not just a rural legislator. I've got to drive 200 miles just to get to rural Oklahoma. But on my drives, every town I drive through, what do they have? They have a parts store. They have a feed store. They may have a cafe that services the farmers and ranchers when they come to town to buy their parts or their feed. But the rest of their stores are boarded up. You don't see dress shops anymore. You don't see shoe shops. And we can't take another hit in rural Oklahoma. We've got to have everything we can have as far as driving our economy, and that's agriculture. We cannot risk putting another hoop for farmers and ranchers to jump through that they're going to move to another state. And out here, it's not far to Liberal. It's not far to Dumas or Stratford. And that bill scared me. It went down, it did get 14 votes, which I was disappointed. I was wanting to die a lot worse than that, so they wouldn't even try to run it again. But it got 14 votes. The author was not there. His daughter was in the hospital, and I'm hoping that some of these 14 votes was sympathy votes because he wasn't there. I know a couple of senators I talked to, that's the only reason is he wasn't there, and they wanted to move it along so he would have a chance to present it himself. But my sympathy was for rural Oklahoma on that, not the Senate author. So I visited with the floor leader of the Senate this week, and he's running for pro tem. We'll be voting on that probably in a couple of weeks. And I just kind of asked him what his vision was, what his long-term vision is for the state of Oklahoma. Because the Senate, so if you all don't know this, the House is where all revenue starts. The revenue has to start in the House. But the Senate kind of guides the direction of the state. They kind of set policy. They kind of helm the course on where the state's going. And so I wanted to know his long-term vision for Oklahoma. And his vision and my vision pretty much line up. I mean, we want to see Oklahoma grow. We don't want higher taxes. We want more taxes. We just don't want higher taxes. And in saying that, we want more taxes because we want the people of Oklahoma making more money, so they're in a higher tax bracket, so they're paying more taxes. We want more businesses in Oklahoma paying taxes. Not higher taxes, there's just more businesses paying more taxes. So we kind of lined up, but one thing that he did say is we have to get a teacher pay raise this year. And not just a teacher pay raise, a state employee pay raise. And so we're going to work real hard on the Senate side to get that done. Now, when I was on the House side, we passed it last year, kind of a step up. That's the wrong word to use. A stair-step, progressive teacher pay raise where they got $1,000 the first year, $2,000 the second, and $3,000 the third. So after 3 years, they would have had a $6,000 pay raise. Well, it got held up in the Senate. So I'm glad their philosophy has changed and they're going to really try to get this done. I know I've fielded a lot of phone calls after the step up from teachers that were upset. And I said, you know, this is not our only option. We have options out here to fund a teacher pay raise. We have the Romney Light plan that we passed out of the House last year that's in the Senate. And I actually got whipped on that yesterday by the Senate to see where I was at. Well, between the Romney Light, the cigarette tax, and the ball and dice, that brings in about $300 million. To give the $5,000 teacher pay raise, we need $280 million. So those three things right there gets that $5,000 teacher pay raise that was in step up funded, and we can get that done. And I think they're pushing that. So with that, I will open it up for questions. Not everybody jump up at once.
Okay.
Casey, how do we stabilize the revenue and income available to the state? Because gross production tax is going to fluctuate wildly,
Right.
with cost of, or
With
price
the
of oil.
price, right. And it's, and it will always be that way. And we've got to diversify. For too long, we've had all our eggs in one basket, and that's been the oil and gas basket. The two drivers to Oklahoma's economy is oil and gas and agriculture. And both of those products are traded on the commodities board, which is up and down. And we've got to diversify. Wind, aerospace. Aerospace, Oklahoma, I think, is ranked 3rd or 4th in the nation for aerospace. We're ranked 2nd in wind. But we have to diversify. We also have to save some money. So this year, and I didn't get into this, and I apologize, with the Board of Equalization that's coming in, that came in last week, we're looking at about a $167 million hole, and actually what they said, the rate that our revenue is coming into the state, by the time we vote on the budget, we will probably have a flat budget. With that being said, what I'm hearing is this year we very well could put $300 million back into the rainy day fund this year. But we've got to save some money. Along with that, we've got to look at some I want to maybe some small revenue raisers. And as you all well aware, the House cannot pass a tax increase with the 75% requirement. So everything's got to be 51. I think right now we're in a good spot with a flat budget. So the 3 years that I've been in office, the first year, $611 million hole in the budget. That next year, $1.3 billion hole, and last year, $868 million hole. The last 3 years that I've been in office, all we've been doing is filling a hole. We have not addressed the problems of the state. We have not continued to grow. We're scrambling. And this year, having a flat budget, I think we have the opportunity to start reinvesting in Oklahoma. And I've used this, Leon would get this. It's kind of like what we've been doing is our fence is down, we've just been baling wiring it together. And I've definitely, during that drought when things were tight, I had a fence that the only thing holding it together was baling wire. But at some point, it's time to rip that out and put a new fence up, and that's where we're at in Oklahoma. It's time to do that, and it gives us the opportunity. There's a representative that had I think he called it the legacy fund, but it would save money and invest money. And in his plan, the way he had it mapped out, in 30 years, Oklahoma could be a trust fund baby. And what I mean by that is through the investments of this saving package that he wants to do, this is besides for the rainy day fund, it would invest the money, and the interest that money would receive, we could fund different things in the state, whether it be education, healthcare, DOC, but just off the interest. So with having a flat budget, it kind of gives us some leeway to start reinvesting in Oklahoma, where we have just been filling a hole. Oil and gas will always be volatile. Agriculture will always be volatile. And how we fix that is we have to diversify. We have to get other industries coming to Oklahoma that instead of like this for our budget and not knowing from one year to the next through oil prices where we're going to be at, we just need a steady, constant climbing. And I don't think we can, just because the way oil and gas and agriculture is, I don't think we can get like that until we do diversify and have other industries in this state.
Oh, you want me to talk? Okay. I just read last night that the state of Georgia just got through passing I don't remember the figures, $5 or $6 billion tax decrease because of the changes in the federal tax bill. How is those changes going to affect Oklahoma, or what changes are you going to make in the tax structure due to the changes in the federal?
We've talked a lot about going to a flat tax. This Romney Light that we're looking at, that's in the Senate, and why it's called Romney Light. It was Romney's plan, tax plan in 2012. It's not the entire plan. That's why we call it Romney Light. We just kind of overpicked it and got the good things out. That's just as far as ideology was one reason I was against the step up. That was a $600 million tax increase to Oklahomans right after Trump gave us some relief from federal taxes. I just felt like we got the relief from the feds and the state is just taking it away from you. I would love to do that, but as far as giving Oklahomans relief on the state side also, but being in the last 3 years what we've went through, we've got infrastructure problems in this state, and not just our roads, our prisons, our education system. We've got to invest in that. And so I guess in the timeline of Oklahoma's history, I think right now we need to be in a rebuilding philosophy in Oklahoma. You know, it's kind of like, Leon, when you have to save heifers and you haven't been, and so you go out there and save quite a few heifers. That first year you're not gonna reap any benefit off of them, but you're reinvesting in your cow herd, and that's kind of where we're at as a state. I think this year with a flat budget, we've got to start reinvesting in the state, and whether that's, and it's across the board. The feds very well could come in here and take over our prison system. The actual structures are dilapidated and falling down. We've got to address that. Our education system needs work, although we need to look at that really hard. I mean, education gets $2.1 billion a year. That 51 cents out of every dollar that we appropriate goes to education. Now, when I say that, that's higher ed and common ed, but they get half of the money we appropriate. But we had a visit yesterday in rural Oklahoma. Our 911 problems that we have. I had a constituent from Cimarron call me this week. They can't get their FSA checks because they don't have a physical address. And they tried to get one, and they can't get a physical address because Cimarron County doesn't have 911 yet. Cimarron County can't afford 911. Harper County can't afford 911. They're going to have to piggyback on maybe Texas County. I think Harper County is going to piggyback either on Woods County or Woodward County. But we have structural problems in the state that we have to address. And we've been, like I said, the last 3 years that I've been there and what I've heard, we've been in this situation for 5 years. It's time to rebuild. We've been patching with baling wire and gray tape. Now it's time to go in there and rebuild the whole fence. We've patched all we could. So as far as giving any relief, I don't see it happening for a while. We've kind of got to get through it. We're not out of the woods yet, but like I told them in caucus the other day, we're not out of the woods yet, but we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're almost there.
Diana Brown, I forgot to do that. Do you want to address the debacle that went on with the state health department? And the second part of that question is a board the best means for picking a department head?
Yes and no. Yes, I will address it, and no, the board is not the best way for that. And I'm sorry, I should have, being just coming off of a campaign, I've talked about it. I just thought I've talked about it here, but maybe I haven't. I talked about it somewhere. So with the healthcare department, what they were doing was they were playing a shell game. And they were moving money around. They were funding programs that didn't have funding, didn't have the money for a program, and they were taking it from this program over here, moving it over here, and where they're going to get into big trouble is they were taking money from federal programs to fund state programs, and that's why the feds are in looking at them. What worries me about that, I think we have more than just one agency that's been doing that. I visited with Representative Kockoroff, who was the chairman of the committee that was investigating them, and he thinks DHS has been doing that, which DHS is a lot bigger than the health department, and he thinks it very well could cost us $100 million. we're getting closer to the bottom of it and getting it fixed, but we've got to look into that and get that fixed. The other thing that just found out this week, so the first A and B meeting I had on the Senate side, we brought in the Department of Health, and I don't know if you've heard that, but OSU and OU's medical programs was going to lose their federal match. And I guess this is one good thing about this year's, before I left the House to move to the Senate, Senator Lankford came and visited with us on the House side. And that question brought up, why did we lose this federal match on OSU and OU's medical program? And someone on our side dropped the ball. They received a letter in 2015 saying you need to address this or you're going to lose your funding. No response, nothing. They received another letter in 2016. No response, no fixes. Then they took it. And as a legislator, we're sitting there, what happened, what's going on? But they knew it was coming, and they did not respond. They did not put in the fixes that needed to happen so we can continue to get those match funds. Someone should have lost the job over that. It costs the state $110 million because they didn't address the problem. And our federal delegation is working on a solution. I'm hoping that we get back on the page where we can get that match, because of all the good things I told you is happening in the state. If DHS's problem is going to cost us $100 million, this medical school issue is going to cost us $110 million. We're right back in a jam again. So I'm hoping that our federal delegation can get the matching stuff back. As far as boards, no. I'm held accountable for everything I do. And you guys are who holds me accountable. If I mess up, you guys are going to send me home. But these boards aren't held accountable to anyone. And my philosophy is I don't think that's how government should work. I think everyone in government should be held accountable, and held accountable to their constituents and their voters. And by every agency's heads being appointed by a board and being ran by a board, there's no accountability. And I think we've seen that happening in Oklahoma the last 6 months to a year. So, yeah, I don't like the boards. Any other questions? So, if you will read my article coming out next week, I will have my new contact information in it, my new office number. If you are calling my house, they are getting me the messages across to the Senate, but just in case anybody drops the ball. I know one summer I had an interim LA that did not get me the messages, so there was several phone calls I didn't make back. But just bear with me the next week or so until we get everything situated that I'm actually getting y'all's emails and phone calls. Thank you all.
Thank you, Casey, for coming out. We really do appreciate it. I know that there's a lot of stuff that you have to work on, and we appreciate your time coming out and updating us. I'd like to thank PTCI again, once again. And this month, actually, in the month of March, we will be taking our Leadership Guyman class to the Capitol. So we'll be visiting you in that neck of the woods so we can teach our future leaders how state government works. So they've been working really hard at learning our local stuff, our education system, and then they'll be learning about our state government. So be prepared. We actually have a really great class again this year, and we have people that are very interested in stepping up into leadership roles, and we're really proud of that. So thank you everyone for coming, and we appreciate your time, and thank you again to PTCI.